Rar.
Rawr.
No. Okay. Rar. Okay. What? Rar in lowercase. That's a really weak and tired T-Rex who hasn't had enough coffee.
Rawr. Rawr.
Rar. Yeah. Anyway, so I decided, just for the hell of it, I was going to call this Bibles and Embryos, because we sort of cover both, and I think people will see that and they'll think, oh, it's about abortion and choice and stuff like that. But no, it's not. So, but I don't know. It's a tentative name. But then I came upon that verse, and I'm like, what the fuck is this? What's up with this verse, right? Like, why would they mention embryos in an ancient Hebrew text? You know? And so I started looking into it. And then, so it's Psalm 139, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And then I noticed that that's what, okay, Sal Cordova is always saying fearsomely, and SFT and all the creationists, they want to say fearsomely and awesomely made. So what the fuck does fearsomely made mean? Fearsome.
Well, I remember it from King James as being fearfully.
Fearfully, yeah, fearfully and awesomely made.
Fearfully and fearfully and wonderfully made. And that just means, wow, you know, it's amazing and
no,
awesome the way
fearfully doesn't mean amazing. Okay, because if you look at this Sefaria.org, which is ancient Hebrew text, they say awesomely and wondrously made. Okay, fearfully is not awesome. Fearful is fucking fearful. So why did they put that in the King James?
I'd have to study the Hebrew word.
I'd like to know exactly where they got that from, because like fearsome, and I don't know. So are they saying that we're fearsome, or they're saying that is this about fearing God? Because they're really into fear, right? Fearing God.
Yeah, it's that passage is about the amazing work of God in the singular act of creating me, the individual, which is you know, from the point of view of the psalmist. A lot of people interpret it as being David, but so that's a person looking upon how their body is, how it works together in a certain way, how, you know, you can you know, go from a small insignificant embryo to a beautifully constructed human being. But fearfully isn't exactly fear. There's a connotation of wonder to it, to where, you know, like you can fear God, but that doesn't mean you're in terror of him at all times. It stops and makes you feel humbled before a greater entity than you. But as far as the exact word usage, you know, what I would do at this point is find an interlinear Bible or whatever, and see what the Hebrew word is, and then engage in a word study.
Okay, so there's a site, fearfully and wonderfully made Obgen. So I think that's about abortion, right? Okay, in the book of Psalms, David writes, okay, anyway, fearfully, when translated from Hebrew, means with great reverence, heartfelt interest, and with respect. But I don't understand how that translates to fearfully.
Well, remember, King James was written in 1611, where the connotations and denotations of words were slightly different.
Yeah.
So you have to take that into account. So awesomely, switching it to awesomely to me seems like a good move for the modern day, just because of the way connotations are.
Okay, then when you look at, if you look down a little bit, okay, the passage that I have on my thumbnail is, what does it look like? Where the hell is it here? Your eyes saw even the embryo of me,
Mm-hmm.
and in your book, all its parts were down in writing. Okay, now in the King James version, it says, let's see, where the fuck is it? In my soul, no.
Oh.
My substance was not hid from thee, curiously low. Thine eyes did see my substance, yet being unperfect, and in thy book all my members were written. Okay, doesn't say anything about embryos. So I think these people are kind of like they're pro choice or
Mm-hmm.
pro.
Well, the imperfect there means incomplete more than
life.
It doesn't mean it was flawed or anything. It just means it was incomplete. So there's nothing that corresponds in the King. Are you looking at the King James? Is that what you're looking at?
I'm looking on the King James at another screen, but right here we're looking at that Hebrew translation with that light.
Yeah.
Where I saw my unformed limbs, and they were all recorded in your book. In due time they were formed, to the very last of them.
And that's the Sepharia.org.
Yeah.
Translation. No, where's the one that, or what version is the one that says embryo specifically?
I don't know. I found it on just a search of images. I just typed in embryos and Bibles, and I found all these images. So I'm just kind of concerned.
Well, that to me, that embryo, you could include embryo in there, I think, but it just seems like that's awfully politically motivated.
Yeah, I think so. So anyway, so where the hell is this? I'm trying to find it again. I gotta find it. Yeah, you're right. Okay, here it is. So this is pin on Jehovah and Jehovah's Witnesses. It's a Pinterest thing. Okay. I don't know where the hell Pinterest.
Pinterest, it's just a place where people show photos of cool, neat things that they've done with their hands, and like quilts and knitting.
Dana Rose saved to my Jehovah. Maybe it's a Mormon thing. I'm not sure.
But probably I'm going to look up the New World Translation and see if it does that to Psalms. What verse is that specifically? 139.
139:16, right around there. So, yeah, this Bible thing is really this Psalm stuff is like really poetic.
Yeah, yeah, because it's basically music, lyrics to songs they shared in worship.
Yeah, so that's pretty cool. But yeah. Anyway, so what else? What else have I found? Oh, there it is. Found a map of the Middle East, which is handy.
Mm-hmm.
That's a nice little map. And then I found this map when on Wikipedia under Edom. They have this map, and they show the kingdom of Edom down here.
Mm-hmm.
And then Moab and Ammon and whatever. But anyway, so we got to decipher some of that and figure out what archaeological evidence we have for Edom. Because I think you said yesterday that it didn't really pop up till about 8th century BC.
Right, yeah.
It became a kingdom.
Yeah, they say they don't find any real evidence of large populations before the 7th or 8th century.
And on most maps, you'll find Tyre up here, and then you'll find Gaza somewhere down here. So we're between, this is like Israel. Israel's pretty small.
Oh yeah, it's very small.
Very
It's just the phrase in real estate is location, location, location. That's um, that's what you could say about that particular area. You have the Mesopotamian empires and the Egyptians, and all sorts of trade routes running up through Israel. There, at least on the coast. Oh, did you notice this interesting comment from Jefferson?
Yeah, I did, and that was my thought exactly when I saw
Yeah.
it. It's like, what the fuck, embryo? Are you kidding me? I did not. Yeah.
Now,
And
what verse did you say that was? 139.
16.
Oh,
Colon
16. Oh, okay.
16. Yeah. 130.
Oh, yeah, that's the New World Translation. Your eyes even saw me as an embryo. All its
What?
parts were written in your book.
What is a New World Translation?
That is the specific Jehovah's Witness translation of the Bible.
Okay. Okay.
So they, just kind of tweaks particular verses and stuff. But I can see where you could use the word embryo, but as far as in translation, so in one sense, you can say all translation is paraphrase, but there's still a looseness of
Right.
translation, and a kind of tightness of translation where you try to keep it as one-to-one, as close as the author intended in the original language. And I would say that's far and wide close to the total, almost, well, I'm not going to say irresponsible, but the total paraphrase of in that particular instance.
Yeah, and what I was saying about this awesomely and wondrously made being translated into fearsome and wondrously made puts an entirely different slant on it. I mean, if you brought the word fear into the idea, right? Fearsome.
Fearful.
I've never looked at a tree. I've never looked at an oak tree and said, or a forest and said, "Oh, fearsome." I've never thought of fear. So what the fuck are they talking about? I call bullshit on this King James thing.
Well,
There's something, and it must.
What I hear, King James has a lot of bullshit about him. So,
well, yeah, it's all fear based, right? I mean, it's all about fear. And anyway, so I don't know. Anyway, that was just a little aside. But so we got a map. We got some maps. This is good. Maps are good. Where do we want to go from there?
well, now I'm just thinking about my looks because, wow, I always thought of Scott Duke as some nerdy looking scientist dude.
You look more like a rabbi or a pastor, or, somebody important.
Oh, wow. It's better to look important than be important.
That's right. Yep. So I don't know what else is happening. So let's see. We got a little preview of an Erica thing that's coming out for Patreons, and that will be out probably tomorrow or whatever. She's doing a little thing on AIG, which is nice.
Yeah, it was just kind of looking at the different thumbnails and stuff that AIG is using now and comparing it to the older ones. Basically, yep. AIG are more clickbaity than they used to be.
Yep.
And you expect that. These are just propaganda mills. They generate propaganda. It's not about the science. It's about basically misinforming the minds of fellow Christians so that they keep coming back and clicking.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's why apparently Cell Cordova banned Andrew Cumming last night. I haven't got confirmation on that. But Andrew Cumming has never said anything like he doesn't swear. He doesn't swear. He doesn't say anything. I mean, he's not contentious. He's always very, very rational. Yeah. Why would he ban him on his fucking site?
Yeah, he just pushes back, with science. Like,
Right.
you say this, but this is the case,
Yeah. So the only reason he would ban him is to what in the hell is going on?
because he's fearfully and unawesomely made.
Yeah, he is afraid of anybody that pushes back on his propaganda. Now he promotes himself as a biophysics researcher. He doesn't do fucking research in biophysics. He's got a book by Biolek, and he read a little bit about he muses about the engineering wonders of the human body, but he hasn't done any research in biophysics. So I don't know what the hell he's talking about. Well, then he says, okay, I've got all these degrees and I'm a researcher and I have all these papers. You should listen to me. But if anybody in my chat disagrees with me, I'm going to ban them.
Not cool. Not cool at all.
No, that's fucking pure propaganda mill bullshit. Why am I so fucking big? I'm bigger than you.
You big.
I'm
You're
big.
the big kahuna. I gotta get some. Today was payday, so I always treat myself to breakfast on payday, having it delivered. So I'm gonna go get it from the front door. I'll be right back.
Okay, you go get it. You go get it. And I'm gonna get this thing running. Rawr. Now I can be big. Haha. Hi, Chris. Hi, Doubting Thomas and Jefferson. And I think, wow. So we have 3 fans. We actually found 1 fan this morning. Somebody who actually likes what we're doing.
Yeah, a new customer.
Yeah, new customer. Yeah, it was pretty cool. So I got my drawing pad up.
I'm going to, we need to appoint Chris Peacock as Minister of Cordova Puns.
Yes.
He deserves that title.
He deserves that title. Yep. Anyway, so want to talk about embryos?
Embryos, sure. Embryos are awesome. I'm about to eat a chicken embryo.
Ooh, cool.
Or should I say an incomplete or unfulfilled, unconsummated chicken embryo?
Right. So what I was saying, or what I've been saying in past days, is like when the cell starts dividing, and you end up with a little mass of cells like this, right? Okay. So these things, every cell has an environment. So it has something around it, right? Okay. You heard the term endocrine, like your endocrine system?
To me, I always interpreted that as having to do with hormones.
Yeah, well, kind of. But hormones are, that's kind of a bullshit term. Hormone is like a substance or a protein that sends signals to cells, and I never really cared for it. But anyway, the endocrine system is like the system where hormones, go ahead.
Is insulin considered a hormone? Because you also go to an endocrinologist with matters about insulin and shit like that.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, I didn't realize it was considered a hormone.
Yeah, but like an endocrine will circulate around your body and have effects very far from where it was emitted. So like, your pancreas is, shooting out insulin and it ends up all over your body and has an effect on all your cells. Well, there's something else called paracrine, okay, which is where the cell emits something right here and it affects other cells that are close by it. So that's paracrine. And then we have something else called juxtacrine, which is when two cells are right next to each other. So that's juxta, meaning close to each other. So there's juxtacrine in embryology.
As in
Where things,
juxtaposed.
yeah, basically these cells are like really affecting each other because they're close together. And sometimes these cells even have like a little channel right here between them so that they're in tight communication with each other, that sort of thing, right? So that's juxtacrine. There's another one called autocrine, which is where the cell basically emits things that influence itself. So that's or they're inside the cell or whatever.
Mhm.
So that's autocrine. So we have endocrine, paracrine, juxtacrine, autocrine, right? All these things. But anyway,
Cool.
the
I want to quickly say good morning to Neslig.
oh, hi, Nestle.
I am honored that he finds our streams worthy to comment on with such cool knowledge.
Oh, a hormone is a substance secreted by endocrine glands and transported throughout the body by the circulatory system. Right. So endocrine is like wider range. Paracrine is cells that are, within a locality. They're close by. Juxtacrine is right next door. Like if you piss off your next door neighbor, you're committing a juxtacrine act. Okay. But now if you piss off your wife, it's an autocrine act.
I appreciate the analogy.
I love analogies. They're awesome. But anyway, cell environment. So around every cell, there's like this network of collagen and fibronectin and a whole bunch of other things. And so there's all these like extracellular matrix is what they call it, or ECM. So an extracellular matrix. So that's one thing. Okay, it's like cotton, around the cell. 25% of your body is collagen, basically one particular kind of protein that ends up forming all these little networks around your cell. And let's see, get another color. What come on, fuck, what is
Collagen is supposed to be very healthy for you.
I couldn't select a color.
Like
Yeah, well, is broth? It? No. Okay, you eat collagen, it gets broken down to amino acids, and then you got to make new collagen. So I call bullshit on eating collagen. So it's good protein, but it ain't going to end up in your fucking cells. It gets broken down, and then it gets turned back into collagen. So you have to do all this work to build it back up. Unless you inject collagen, I suppose you could try that. But anyway, our dying son, where am I? You are in hell.
You are in Answers in Atheism, hell.
Yeah. Answers in Atheism, hell. Okay. So in this extracellular network, you're going to have, like various proteins and some really strange glycoproteins and all sorts of other stuff around here, right? So this is the environment of your cell. And the other part of your environment is if cells are right next to each other, they're going to be influencing each other right here, right? Because they're right close together. Okay. And part of that environment is going to be, there's going to be physical pressures from other cells, basically on other cells. So sometimes, okay, well, let me go a little bit further. There's another thing, and I want a pen. And I want to try to pick a color again, but color picking is not working for me this morning. Okay, so inside the cell, there's also this network of crosshatches and actin fibers and microtubules and other stuff. So inside of your cell around the nucleus, there's also all that cotton, that cotton batting, right? So that's also the environment of the cell. And then internally, from the top of the cell to the bottom of the cell, you could have a different environment. Now, sometimes these actin fibers will work like this, where they will take a cell and they will wrap around one end of it, sort of, and they will constrict and they will make the top of the cell smaller than the bottom of the cell. So then if we have a bunch of cells lined up like that, we end up with like these little circular. I mean, it can actually start forming a little cavity or an invagination or something like that, right? So now the cells are basically wrapping upon themselves and they're going to form like a tube. And that's kind of how your brain starts to form, with this constriction of these actin fibers around one end of your cells. So, I mean, there's all these goings on that are both mechanical and chemical. So we have mech and we have chem. So those are affecting every single cell. So when you start out as, this zygote, which starts, dividing and multiplying, it starts affecting cells around it. And then the whole process starts, and one cell will turn another cell into a different kind of cell. And then that cell will start to divide, and then it'll go down the road and it will turn other cells into different kinds of cells. And it ends up creating all these different cell types and tissue types that are all local. Does any of that not make sense? Oh, is this UK time, Dying Sun?
Apparently it is, but I love the
Apparently,
positive feedback there.
Right. So we got a whole lot of things to consider, but the upshot is that every cell has an internal environment and it has an external environment.
And we never, I mean, we could go through our lifetimes not knowing that.
You could.
Yet it would be a reality anyway.
It would be a reality anyway. And another really important thing about cells is that internal environment ends up having memory. So it remembers where it was and what signals it got in the past. And that's where I came up with these trees. So you have one cell type here that turns into two different cell types over here. And that turns into, again, another couple of cell types. And that one turns into two cell types, right? And so now we have a lot of different cell types based on this external environment and the memory inside the cell. Cell biology, that's what we're talking about. Okay, Chris.
Well, he has to do those Sal puns.
Cell biology. Anyway, so that's kind of where the whole story starts. Now, there's another part of the story that I should just mention before we go too far afield, is that in the mommy, okay, when the zygote is created, there are other cells around that, basically, where the zygote's created. So there's all these cells around the zygote, right? And that ends up creating a certain environment for the zygote, or actually the egg, and then the egg gets fertilized. And what that does is it creates these gradients, basically. So we have lots of a certain protein down here, protein 1, and we have very little of that protein up here, protein 2. Okay. So protein 2 may end up becoming your head, and protein 1 will become your butt based on what you got from your mommy. So you get a little bit of the environment from your mommy, and then your daddy sort of pokes in there. Oh my God. Why did I say that? So basically, there's an environment that comes from your mommy being in the womb that creates these gradients that start this whole ball of wax rolling, that sort of thing. And that's kind of the beginning of embryology. So I don't think I have any more. Oh, yeah. Did I want to say something else? Yeah, maybe a little more. So another thing about cells is some of them have proteins sticking out of them. And one of these proteins is called Notch. And another one might have a protein sticking out of it called delta. And if these two things get together, what happens is Notch will release a little bundle, and it will end up penetrating the nucleus and causing certain genes to turn on. So this cell knows that it's next to this cell over here.
So there's literally a protein named delta and one called notch.
Yeah, delta notch, and there's also jagged notch. Okay. And I forget where the name delta came from, but notch was named when they found Drosophila wings, basically the wings of an insect. They're supposed to be kind of like that. But then they found some wings that were like defective and they had a big notch in them. And they found out that the notch gene was mutated. So they named the gene notch. They frequently name genes by what happens if you screw with it, if it's a mutant. So wingless, basically, if you have wingless, you'll have wings. Okay. If you don't have it, basically, if it's broken, then you won't have wings. Mm-hmm. So they named wingless. They should have named it winged, right, instead of wingless, but they went the other way.
Okay, here you've reminded me of a very interesting documentary I saw years ago. That guy who turned genes on and off in a chicken embryo, and it developed, teeth and what have you.
Oh,
I think they were able to turn off its feathers.
Yeah.
Have they done anything similar to that yet? Gone beyond all that? I know they can't take an embryo past a certain point, or it's animal cruelty. But I've just wondered, have they been able to turn on various genes and things and do interesting stuff beyond that?
They've tried to. Basically, mostly what they do is knock out one, and they'll figure out what the mutant form is.
So they're just trying to isolate.
Yeah, but as far as constructive biology, they haven't. It is so complicated that they haven't yet been able, and the creationists will love this. They haven't yet been able to build anything new, like really good and new, right?
Yeah.
I think they're working on it, and they're not working on that a lot. They're mostly trying to figure out what the genes do in normal developing organisms. So they're not trying to really build new organisms, but I think they should, because at some point, I think they could put a new, like particularly for things like shrimp, they have a lot of limbs, right? They have a lot of different kinds of limbs, certain arthropods, and it would be very easy to mutate them into some new function. Because they'll have like, I don't know, they have like 12 limbs as far, and I might be misremembering. I hope I'm not. 12 limbs. One will be for rudders. One will be for feeding. One will be for sensing stuff. Another one will be for scooting along the bottom of the ocean. They have all these different functions, right?
And so the brain is wired to deal with those different limbs in a specialized way.
Right. Yeah. So the brain basically.
That's a lot of wiring for a tiny little shrimp brain.
Yeah, the wiring and the circulatory system come up at the same time as some new limb or some new organ builds, right? So they all three grow together, and one of the ways that they all grow together is with this signaling that I'm talking about right here, where one cell will affect another cell. But this is only one kind of signaling. There's other signals where you'll have a receptor on the basically on the cell, and you'll have some ligand, they call it, that will attach to that receptor. Now that's a protein that's floating around extracellular outside in the extracellular matrix, and it will turn this thing on, and this thing will attach to another one down here, and then it will release something, and that will basically cause something else to turn on. And eventually it'll get down to the nucleus. So these become like Rube Goldberg machines. So there's many different ways for the cell to sense its surroundings. It can do it mechanically. It can do it by temperature. It can do it by proteins attaching to ligands or attaching to transmembrane proteins that end up telling the inside of the cell to do something. So we have as many different kinds of pathways as one could imagine. I mean, it just seems like nature used everything. So, yes, Delta Squad. So we have delta and not. So we have a delta, not, and then they talk about like we'll figure out one of these pathways, and we'll give it a name like delta not, or jagged not, or wint something. Oh God, I forgot what goes with wint. But anyway, so there's all these different pathways that we're figuring out. But on the other hand, there are, like, for every one of these little transmembrane signaling things, every time we find one pathway, we'll find, oh, we just discovered a new thing that attaches to that and does something new. So now we have a new pathway. So there's all these pathways that
So there's just a lot going on inside a cell.
And some of those pathways that we're finding, I think, are mutations that don't do anything yet, but they may do something 1,000 generations in the future.
So they believe, these are very evolved but very busy cells. So are they thinking, in the world of biogenesis, that cells are just adapted from living single-celled organisms, but they learn to cooperate?
Yes.
Okay, that's pretty cool.
And that's the evolutionary aspect that we have to look at, basically. Okay, there's you have all these separate prokaryotes floating around, and at one point they started dividing. Oh, that's the other part I should tell you about in cells. The other thing is that cells have sticky things. They're actually made of like sugar and proteins, and they're on the outside of the cell. So one type of cell will stick to itself, okay, but it won't stick to anything else. So it'll end up creating a little cluster of like this. It'll all stick together, right? Now, if we have all these separate cells, or these organisms, and they have sticky stuff that evolves on the surface. Now they start sticking together, and now we have a colony, right? And they've actually done something like this. They've done laboratory experiments with some algae where they've got these things to stick together, because when they stuck together, predators couldn't get them.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
It was safer for the group.
Yeah. So the story of evolution is that eventually some of these inside cells started taking on different, basically because they were on the inside and they weren't on the outside. So they weren't getting signals from the outside.
And they might as well get busy doing something.
Yes. And
do something useful. Don't just sit there.
Right.
And
they
huddle.
they basically changed what genes were expressed for the inside cells. And so now the inside cells are different than the outside cells. And the outside cells do something and the inside cells do something. And that was the beginning of multicellular evolution.
Very interesting.
Yep. Anyway, that's enough of that shit.
It's like when you're at work, and I'm imagining like working at a grocery store or something like that when I was a teenager, and you did your assigned tasks and everything, and then the manager goes, and I'm just standing around, we're huddling around together, just chit-chatting, all us workers, and the manager hands us brooms and says, "Get busy, do something useful."
Do something useful, right?
Yeah. And I think every workplace ought to be that way. If you're done with your work for the day, grab a broom, damn it.
Yeah.
And make yourself useful.
Yeah, let's talk about stories for a minute. Like, okay, so just a story. Okay, there's like Stephen King makes up stories, right? With his imagination. But then if I want to figure out how something happened in my yard, and I'll get to a specific example, okay? I come up with a story about how it happened.
That doesn't mean stories from your yard.
That doesn't mean it's just a story that I made it up, that I thought, okay, witches and goblins came and they did this thing and whatever. No, that's not what I'm making up. I'm making up a story that could have happened, because I'm trying to figure out what did happen. Okay.
Yeah, it's like there's and of course I get this from my years and years and years of watching Law and Order. There's a thing called the theory of the crime,
Right.
where you examine the forensic evidence and listen to what people say, witnesses and people who have some sort of vested interest in the crime or whatever, and they put together the theory of the crime. In other words, what motivated people who had the opportunities and the access to murder weapons or whatever, and this is what the police or the prosecutor believe happened given the evidence.
Right.
It's just a story, and the defense will try to take that story apart.
Right.
But it's the story, the narration that tells you where all this evidence points, and that's what's happening with evolution. That's what's happening with repeating a series of thoughts about what happened in the past. You're looking at the evidence and saying this looks to be the best explanation for what happened in the past.
Right. Yeah. So story is a hypothesis about what, and you try to figure out what could have happened. And the way we do this in evolution is we're not coming up with things. We're not making things up. We're figuring out things that we know happen. We know that these cells communicate with each other. We know about extracellular glue and matrices and all of that. So we have all of this evidence which we can observe today. And from that, we put together a plausible way for a organism to evolve over time. That is not making up fictional stories like Stephen King does. Okay, it's a very different fucking thing. Like, okay, for instance, yesterday, I went outside and on top of my garbage cans was a container of Chinese food, and it had rice in it. And there was just the container sitting on top the middle garbage can. Now, on the right garbage can, not the middle one, but another garbage can, the day before, I had thrown out a container of Chinese food with rice in it, which I had inside of a garbage bag, all wrapped up. Okay, and on top of that, I threw...
That sounds so delicious.
I threw a couple bags of cat litter, right? Okay, which is not delicious, but I threw cat litter on top of the bag. And these garbage cans are like 60-gallon garbage cans. They're huge. Mm-hmm. They have big, heavy lids on them. And inside of the garbage bag, underneath the cat litter, was this rice container. Somehow, something took it out of the garbage can, opened the lid, took it out of the garbage can, closed the lid again, very carefully placed it on another garbage can, didn't spill anything. So what the fuck is going on in my yard? And I'm thinking, well, okay.
Could you say that again?
Shut up. Fuck you, Siri. I'm always arguing with Siri. Anyway, I treat Siri very badly. So about a month ago, we heard this noise outside, and I went out there, and there was a raccoon sitting on top of the garbage cans. So we figured out that they can open those lids. But
was it kick back smoking a cigarette?
How did he get the container out without spilling anything anywhere? And how did he get it out from under the cat litter? The garbage bag was a little bit open. But anyway, so I have all these clues, and I'm trying to put together a story. Mm-hmm. But it's not just a story. Something did this. Maybe homeless people are coming into our yard at night, because it's almost like it would take a human to do it that cleanly, and I just don't get it. Now,
maybe it's a bag lady who just loves those raccoons.
Well, last summer I found a tassel from my son's graduation in the middle of the yard, and then 2 weeks prior to that, I found an 8th grade picture of my sister-in-law out in the middle of the yard. And these items are stored in our garage. Basically, we have a another story on top of the garage where we store all of these artifacts. Something went up there and got the tassels for my son's graduation and got the 8th grade picture of my sister-in-law and decided to put it out in the middle of the yard and just leave it there. And I'm like, what the fuck is going on? Now I have 60 pounds of dog food or 100 pounds of dog food in the garage, and that never gets eaten. So I don't think it's raccoons. So I don't know. But anyway,
Some sort of bird or squirrel.
Evolution is a lot easier than figuring out what is going on at night in my yard. That's what I'm saying. I don't know. We'll figure it out. I need a cam out there. I gotta have a cam. Yeah,
you can go and get those motion triggered cams from.
I know.
Like they capture animals on the trail or whatever. They hang it from a tree.
Yeah, that's the other thing. They never scatter the garbage all over. They're very polite raccoons. They always close the garbage can back up. I don't know. Anyway, but it's just a story. Whatever.
Just a story. That's just trying to be dismissive.
Yeah, we're trash talking. You got to run, right?
Yeah, it's Friday. I have zero motivation. Just this.
Wow, Danny.
But I guess he wants to revive the natural selection discussion.
Yeah, we should talk about natural selection, Danny. Why don't we schedule a time where you come in and we talk about natural selection? And maybe I could get you to listen to what biologists think about it. I don't know. Anyway,
biology.
That would be useful. Extracellular matrix. Oh my God.
Biology. Oh my God. Doubting Thomas is going into it now.
He's doing it, and he's competing for the title, right? Anyway.
Very, very cool.
So okay, there's so what did you learn about cells communicating with each other? My friend.
Juxta, and there's those prefixes for together. There's those
para, juxta, auto.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I didn't think about it. I didn't know they classified them in those terms because I haven't
they do.
really read about cell biology.
Yeah.
Oh, there's one, cell biology.
Cell biology. So you have to to recap, you have to think about the environment of the cell, internally, externally. There are basically two different things, and the cell will change depending on what environments it is in. And as the embryo develops, these changes will start to get locked in by memory, and you'll end up with a kidney, a lung, a heart, a brain, unless you're a creationist.
If I only had a brain.
If I only had a brain. Okay. Anyway, let's wrap her up.
All right. Shoot her in the head.
Shoot her in the head. Okay. What the fuck am I doing? What's happening? Oh, we're wrapping her up. Okay. Goodbye, cruel world.